So the Eagles coaching search is continuing to heat up, with the Eagles interviewing multiple big-name candidates to fill crucial positions under new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, and they may have just found the perfect coach to add to the staff. Meanwhile, there has been some buzz recently that Vic Fangio may not have been so well liked by the players during his time in Miami, so will this turn out to be a problem for the Eagles? Plus, despite all the ridicule of Nick Sirianni's somewhat unclear role as the head coach, Jason Kelce isn't buying into it, as a while back, he dropped some truth on exactly what makes Sirianni's role so valuable. So let's talk about that and everything else Eagles related from these past couple days. And we won't waste any time, let's get straight into it. Okay, so despite the disappointing season that the Eagles just had, we can at least all agree that one of the bright spots was the combination of AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith. I mean, I think it's clear at this point that those two make up the best receiver duo in Eagles history, and it's not even close. And despite what some people wanted to try to do, if you remember way back to the beginning of this season and kind of make it a competition between the two guys, there's no denying that they just want to see each other succeed, and they have great chemistry. And they showed off their chemistry in a kind of interesting but entertaining way in a video of them eating wings on Whistle Sports.
Ready for a win?
Oh.
You getting a little hot, huh?
Yeah, getting a little hot.
Okay, this is Know Your Wingman.
Let's see how well he knows me and I know him. What's my favorite route to run?
Your favorite route is the option route.
Well, technically he's not wrong. It's really whichever one I'm gonna get the ball on. It don't matter to me.
What's my favorite dessert?
Banana pudding.
That's correct.
I know a little something. I know
That's
a little something. What are four of my nicknames?
Slim Reaper, Smitty. I think I gave you that. Tay.
Not too many people know about Tay, but you're right.
The fourth nickname gotta be Skinny.
Impressive.
What is AJ short for? You better not say the wrong answer.
Arthur Warren.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. It's Arthur Jawan. I don't know why I did not correct the announcer when they started saying my name. Arthur Warren Brown. That is not my name. My name is Arthur Jawan Brown. My mother named me Arthur Jawan Brown.
I don't see nothing wrong with Warren, man. Arthur Warren.
I see a lot wrong with it.
You gotta love AJ and Smitty. I mean, again, this is easily the best receiver duo the Eagles have ever had, and it's crazy to think that there is a portion of the fan base that wants to split these guys up. There are certain fans who are mad at AJ, they think he's a diva, and they wouldn't mind if he got traded, which, to me, that's just ridiculous. The guy is coming off back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons in his first 2 years with the Birds, and his guys clearly love him. You can see it here in this video with DeVonta, and he's also just clearly one of the best leaders in that locker room. And then on Smitty's side, I mean, there's no secret that he's a great locker room guy too, and we gotta find a way to keep him around for the long term. He's been nothing short of incredible in his first 3 years in Philly, and I think we can all agree that he wasn't even utilized correctly last season. I think his ceiling is so much higher than we've seen, so I think the number one priority for Howie Roseman this offseason has to be to extend DeVonta Smith. He's now up for an extension with this past year being his third season, and if they don't extend him, this is going to be a contract year for him. So we can afford to let him go through this year not locked up for the long term. He's too good for that. He's too crucial to the Eagles' success. And of course, again, we can't break up this all-time duo. So let's hope that they can get that done as quickly as possible, and the duo of AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith can stay together in Philly for many more years to come. And drop a like down below for that. Now, moving on from that video to some other recent news, we of course all know that the Eagles have hired Vic Fangio to be their new defensive coordinator, which of course we broke down and really went into detail on in my last video, so you can go check that out after this video if you want. But I essentially came to the conclusion that despite us all not being the biggest fan of Vic Fangio's scheme, it most likely is a solid hire, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the defense and whether or not he can turn it around from last year. Now, that being said, something I didn't mention in my last video about Fangio is the fact that he may not have been the most well-liked guy during his time with Miami, specifically by the players, as we got several pieces of information that support this notion, starting with the fact that multiple Miami players took to social media to hint at the fact that they're not very upset that Fangio's leaving. Jalen Ramsey liked the tweet reporting that Fangio and the team were parting ways.
Himself picking a rock, rocks right after himself picking a rock, rocks right after himself picking a...
And then you also got Tyreek Hill tweeting, quote, "Not OG Vic Fangio," seemingly sarcastically. And then you have this video of NFL agent Drew Rosenhaus explaining that there were multiple players on Miami that weren't exactly big fans of Fangio.
There were quite a few players on the team that didn't necessarily get along with Fangio. And so it wasn't a great relationship with many of the players. There were some guys that loved him, but there was quite a few that didn't. It definitely wasn't a unanimous positive relationship.
So that's definitely interesting because we know that one of Nick Sirianni's core values is connecting. So to bring in a coach that recently wasn't getting along with his players definitely raises some eyebrows, but honestly, I really don't think I'm too worried about it, because what it sounds like to me is that maybe some of the guys weren't taking Fangio's hard coaching too well. Now, disclaimer, I have no internal knowledge of the situation, this is just an outsider's perspective, and I am definitely speculating here, but I just feel like it's the only one thing that makes complete sense to me, because Fangio's a guy who's gonna get on his players, he's gonna hold them accountable, he's gonna coach them hard, and in all honesty, I think that this is a great thing, because we saw just how bad the defense was in Philly this past year, and a large part of it was just players screwing up on the fundamentals, like guys missing tackles or blowing coverages, or just being lazy out there. And that's not going to happen with Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. He simply won't put up with it, and I think as long as these guys are willing to take the hard coaching and they make it a point to connect early on when the players get back in the building, things are going to be okay as far as player and coach relationships. And when you hear this shining endorsement from former NFL head coach Jim Mora, who also worked with Fangio multiple times, including giving him his first pro coaching job 40 years ago, it's hard to imagine we're going to have any sort of real problem in terms of relationships.
You're getting a great coach. I'm talking about one of the best. And you're talking about a good guy, a really good guy. I mean, he'll be great with the fans. He loves Philadelphia. It's his hometown, the whole thing. And you're getting a number one person and a number one football coach. He is special. I love him. I think he's the best.
No, of course, yes, we really don't know what's going to happen. For all I know, maybe the relationships between the players and Fangio actually turn out to be an issue, but I'm just going to try and not jump to any conclusions before I see how things actually play out when the season gets rolling. Now, one thing I am excited about with Fangio is the potential staff that he's going to have working under him. Because one thing about Philly's positional coaching staff defensively this past year is that they really didn't have much NFL experience at all, but it looks like that's about to change, as the Eagles are currently looking to replace linebacker coach DJ Elliott, who was just here for 1 year, which was his only year of coaching in the NFL, by the way. Now, the Birds have already interviewed a couple guys, one being former Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry, who sure was not a great defensive coordinator by any means, but the guy does have 22 years of NFL coaching experience, many of those as a linebacker coach, and he's had great success in that role. Plus, in his most recent stint as the defensive coordinator in Green Bay, he really elevated the play of those linebackers. Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker both really grew into very, very good players under him, so I would definitely be pretty happy with that hire. But then the other guy who they interviewed, and honestly probably the guy I'd prefer, is former Jags defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell, who the Eagles had actually interviewed for their open defensive coordinator position before hiring Fangio, but even after that, it seems like he's still a strong candidate to join the coaching staff. Now, Caldwell wasn't great as the defensive coordinator in Jacksonville last year, but he also is a guy with a lot of experience. He's coached in the league for 16 years, and like Barry, a lot of Caldwell's years were spent at linebacker coach, and he had a lot of success in that role. Now, recently, he spent a few years as the Bucs linebacker coach, where he helped Devin White and Levante David have multiple great seasons. Speaking of which, both of those guys are free agents this offseason, so if Caldwell joins the staff, is there a chance that White or David follows him and comes to Philly? I don't know. I mean, I doubt that Caldwell being here would be the main deciding factor for either of those guys, but I think it would maybe help Philly's case at least a little bit. But getting back to Caldwell, I think there's reason to believe that he'd be perfect for this position. I mean, one, the guy is a former linebacker himself who actually played for the Eagles for a few seasons and had a really good amount of success, and two, he's gotten some ringing endorsements from multiple people recently. Andrew DeCecco reported that somebody had spoke about Caldwell as a linebacker coach and said, quote, "He was commanding in the room because he takes over. He teaches you the game and why we are doing what we do. He can relate to all the players in the room no matter how they learn. If you ask me, he is the guy for the job." And then Jeff Kerr also on top of that reported that Caldwell's former Eagles teammate Hugh Douglas said, quote, "They wouldn't make a whole lot of mistakes. I'll tell you that. Mike was one of the smartest linebackers I've ever played with, no question about it." And Douglas also said, quote, "I feel like having veteran coaches like a Mike Caldwell in there, they may not be as talented, but they're going to know where to go, they're going to know what to do, and they're going to know their assignments. That's important." And then to top it all off, DeCecco then reported later that another one of Caldwell's Eagles teammates in Bobby Taylor gave him another great endorsement, saying, quote, "Mike was probably one of the smartest guys we had on defense after myself. He played a very important role because he was our nickel personnel linebacker who controlled our calls and what coverage we needed to be in. He will be able to earn the respect of the guys with his ability to connect with his players in many unique ways, while also being able to demand a high level of professionalism to get them to produce on a consistent high level. I think it would be a no-brainer to hire Mike. He's smart and effective communicator and can provide personnel insight on the type of guys we need to be in the linebacker room." I don't know about you, but all that makes me think that the Eagles need to hire Caldwell ASAP. And who knows, maybe he could actually get the best out of Nakobe Dean, who we know has promise and talent, but he has had a rough go of it to start his career. And we know that GM Howie Roseman has confidence in Nakobe, which I talked about in my last video, but Nakobe actually recently spoke himself, and he's very confident moving forward as well, despite coming off an injury, saying, quote, "Being a guy who never missed a game in high school or college, never even missed a practice, to miss more than half of the season, it definitely hit me hard. I know who I am, I'm confident in my game, I know the type of player I can be, I know the type of person I can be for the city. I can't wait for the OTAs, I can't wait for training camp, I can't wait until next year." So he definitely loved to hear that from Nakobe, especially after how rough of a year he had in 2023, and hopefully he can prove the doubters wrong in 2024, because the Eagles defense just needs him to be great, and I do think that Mike Caldwell could really help to bring the best out of him. So what do you guys think? Should the Eagles hire Mike Caldwell, and also will Nakobe Dean have a bounce back year? Now, we know that the Eagles are certainly hoping for a bounce-back year after the disappointment that was the 2023 season, and whether we like it or not, it's going to be Nick Sirianni captaining the ship, so he's going to have to do a much better job than last year where things fell apart. And of course, Nick was probably the main guy being criticized for the struggles last year, and by the end of the season, I think a large majority of the fan base wanted the 3-year head coach fired. Now, of course, like I said earlier, he's going to be back, and that was pretty much confirmed when he had his end-of-season press conference along with general manager Howie Roseman this past week. But during that press conference, something really interesting came out of it, with Nick being asked the question of what exactly his role is going to be, with him saying that the new offensive coordinator would be the leader of the offense, and the defensive coordinator would be the leader of the defense, to which Nick responded his role would be the head coach. And then he followed that with a very long, vague answer. And that had a lot of people criticizing Nick, basically saying that he does nothing. But as I talked about in my last video, multiple really successful head coaches have the same exact role as Sirianni, and this is really nothing new in the NFL. It's really pretty common that the head coach is a CEO, overseer type of role, so I think this is basically a non-issue. But if that's not enough to convince you, then take a listen to what Jason Kelce had to say on an episode of New Heights back in December of 2022. As he said, quote, "I think it's really nice to have a coach whose sole job it is to narrow in on these specific situations that only come up once a season, if that. I kind of like it when the coach doesn't call plays. They're more involved with the team, they're more in the moment, they're more managerial, they communicate more. The bigger part of that job is being able to lead, being able to manage, being able to communicate, being able to keep everybody going in the right direction, situational ball." So I definitely completely 100% agree with Kelce there, and I think in the past we've seen Nick be really, really good at a lot of these things. The problem is, Nick didn't do a good enough job on these things either this past year, so he's definitely got some work to do to prove himself and the Eagles again, so let's hope that he and the Birds can do that. Now, we're going to be covering the Philadelphia Eagles throughout this entire offseason, so if you don't want to miss any more Eagles updates just like this, make sure you go down right now, subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you don't miss any other Eagles videos just like this. Also, if you did enjoy this video and want to see others like it, make sure you drop a like to show some support. I'd greatly appreciate it. And also, leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. And if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can go check this one out right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.